Here we go.
Hi.
Good evening. Welcome to Life and Soul. Good evening, Emma. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Andy. Enjoying the nice weather. How are you?
Warm, putting it mildly. Yeah. There we go. Well, we're into week 3 already. This is going okay, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
I'm
I just
enjoying
pose a question if anybody wants to do some live comments as we're going through? The question I've got is: have you had a spiritual experience? And we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
great.
Well, I was going to say a very different evening. Do you want to introduce what we're going to do for the first part of the evening tonight?
Yeah, so I've been busy. My dad agreed to be interviewed for Life and Soul at Home. So we're going to show the video. Dad and I talk about spiritual things quite a lot. We've done it quite a lot over the years. And we had a chat for about half an hour and edited it down to 8 minutes. So I'll just give you a tiny bit of background. My dad would not say he's a believer. But he was brought up Catholic, so he went to church until he was in about his early 20s. And he's got a science background, so we've just had some really interesting chats over the years. And I thought it would fit in really nicely with Life and Soul. And yeah, it'd be good to see what you think of it.
Brilliant. Can I just say hello to my son who's just joined us tonight, since we're talking fathers and children here, okay? Hi, Wesley. That's his second name, okay?
I thought that was your son.
Okay, cue video, I guess.
Yeah, cue video.
But what's God like? I mean, I think from a scientific or point of view, science doesn't have all the answers, and there are still major issues. If there was a Big Bang, what caused the Big Bang? Why is there anything rather than nothing, etc.? What I don't think God is like, I don't think God has got a long white beard and a white a long white hassock. I don't believe in that.
I asked you what you thought God was like if he existed, and you told me what you thought he's not like. So you said not a man in the sky with a beard and so on, and I agree with you on that. What could he be like if he existed?
Oh dear, who? I can't think of the man's name. He's very irritating. He was in Blackadder.
Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry, even though I find him extremely irritating when he's not in Blackadder, he made a very good point. He was arguing with a chap, I think it was on Irish TV.
Yeah, it was.
Said, well, something like, how can a good God possibly allow the creation of an insect which burrows into the eyes of children, to lay its eggs and cause them to be blind? That must be a terrible person. And I go along with that argument. I can't see a way around that argument.
It's a difficult one to argue with. Yeah. Yeah. So if I just come back to something you said before, because so a lot of people watching, you mentioned the arguments for the existence of God. So the argument from design is an interesting one, isn't it? So you said the story in Genesis, the story of creation, to you, it's obvious it's not literally true. But the idea that, where did it all come from? You sound you're a bit more sympathetic with that.
Well, it is a question, and it's a non-trivial question, but the problem is that one can always say, here's an intractable problem, and we haven't got a clue of the answer to it. So let's just say the fairies did it, or some spiritual entity did it. But if you consider at every stage in civilization, I mean, I read somewhere, and I can't remember where it was, in each generation would regard developments in the next generation as being magic. answers to apparently intractable questions do sometimes emerge. You know, in the 19th century, infectious diseases were thought to be due to bad air, you know, malaria. Nobody knew, for example, how you could get cholera or typhus or typhoid. And then as the germ theory, you know, was gradually generated, so we began to understand it. So I suppose the conclusion of all that is that, you know, Jesse saying here's an intractable problem. What was the first cause? Where did it come from? Just saying, oh, it was God, I think is too easy.
Okay. Yeah, I see what. So that's great. Thanks, Dad. So we've talked about the argument from design, and you pointed out, well, actually, in some cases, that's not entirely convincing. And we talked about first cause, like what caused everything. And you've said, well, just because we don't know doesn't mean it's a magic explanation. So would you say that you're an atheist? Would you say that you're an agnostic? What would you say your belief is?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I have struggled with this. It's an interesting question because, you know, a proper scientist will say if he's absolutely certain about something or if he doesn't know. So you ought to, the conclusion of a proper scientist would be to say, well, I don't know because I can't know that there definitely is a God. Definitely is not a God. But to me, there's so much evidence that points towards the fact that there isn't, that I think I'm probably nearer being an atheist than an agnostic. Because to suggest that I don't know suggests that I don't really believe, you know, the really telling arguments against the existence of a supreme being.
Okay, let's have a look at my questions. So have you ever had a positive spiritual experience?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. There are two answers to that, and I have commented on this on my blog. I do sometimes, when I go into churches, have what passes, I suppose, for a spiritual experience, and I put it down to a sort of, it's almost as though the generations of people that have worshipped in that church down the ages sort of somehow talk to me, and I somehow get a feeling of kinship with them. But it's people, not disembodied spirits. The other spiritual experience I sometimes experience is through music. And there are I mean, I've written down things that you probably I mean, the Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ode to Joy, which is very much a secular view. Mahler's Second Symphony, the Resurrection Symphony, when, you know, there's this wonderful chorus at the end celebrating the resurrection of Christ. There's Mahler's Eighth Symphony. At the end of that, there's the last part of Faust, where Faust actually ends up going to heaven. You know, he's saved in the end. And then there's the Liebestod from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, which is Isolde after her lover Tristan has died. She sings this wonderful aria, basically celebrating him and their love and all the rest of it. So that, you know, that affects me spiritually.
Wow.
So there you go.
Yeah, that was what a great man.
Yeah, we have some good chats. We have some good chats. It was the video editing. Were you impressed, Andy?
Well, the way it jumped about was quite cool, I thought. Yeah, is that what you meant?
No, it wasn't one. Never mind.
Oh, it was great. Thank you for that. I know coming down from tough. Yeah. So your dad's actually a scientist. Let's just confirm that. So knows a bit about those things, because science used to freak me out. A bit kind of scary, some of the science lessons I went through and things. So
yeah, well, he's got a science background. So my dad's retired now. He works in sales, but his background is physics, particularly lasers. Actually, lasers were his subject. But yeah, so that I thought it was really interesting what he said about how a scientist will say if they're not sure. So you don't say if you make a claim, you've got to be sure about it and have good evidence for it. Yeah. And he was saying, well, we can't be sure there's no God. Therefore, scientifically, say I'm an agnostic rather than an atheist. So that was kind of interesting. I never heard that before.
Yeah. But interesting about the whole science thing, because I was trying to understand about the thing about Stephen Fry and all the rest of it, because I did a bit of research this afternoon about that to look up about what is actually the fact behind that. And apparently it's something called a lower worm, which I'm not going to go into details now because this isn't the place, but folks want to look that up. That was what he was talking about. Stephen Fry was talking about, because I wanted to understand that, and that's often used as one of the discussion points. But science is interesting, isn't it? Can I just talk about chocolate cake just for a moment, because I try as much as I can. I probably mentioned it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago on Star Wars Day, and obviously people make me chocolate cake, which is wonderful. And a scientist could understand how a chocolate cake is made using eggs and chocolate and more chocolate and butter and more chocolate, etc., etc., and how it could be made. But science wouldn't necessarily help us to understand why people have made me a birthday cake. So science looks at the facts and the figures around things and has to justify and prove things. Yeah, this is my understanding, but doesn't that is the wrong tool to understand about why things have actually happened? How things, I get. Do you agree with that, or you've got a different view on that?
I think it is helpful as far as it goes, but I guess even that whole thing about a first cause was interesting. So that was an argument for the existence of God, and it's quite a scientific one actually. It's kind of saying, well, we've got the world here. We have 8 billion human beings, and however many thousands, hundreds of thousands of species of animal on the planet. Where do they all come from? Where did the planets come from? Where did the stars come from? And that's in a sense kind of quite a scientific question. So you can use science to a certain extent. Of course, you can't be sure.
Yeah. So if you go right back to scientists called the Big Bang, of course, then my question is: so what actually caused the Big Bang in the first place? If we do come from those, and I'm just going to leave that kind of question. Your dad talked about being an atheist as opposed to an agnostic. Can you give us a definition of atheist and agnostic before we discuss those a little bit? Do you think?
Yeah. So when I was 11 years old on my first day at secondary school, I had to fill in a form about it said, what religion are you? And the teacher said to us, you can put atheist if you want. And I said, what's an atheist? And she said, an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God. And I'm like, oh, that's me. So I wrote that down. So an atheist doesn't believe that God exists. An agnostic, there's slightly different interpretations, but basically agnostic isn't sure, or in some cases an agnostic would say, well, we can't know. It's not possible to know for sure.
Right. So I was interested that the Atheist Society did a campaign on buses in London a couple of years ago, and they basically said, where's my little quote so I get the words right, basically, there is probably no God, now stop worrying and enjoy your life, which I thought was quite interesting, and some people actually responded to that. A lady from the Methodist Church actually said the God you're talking about, we don't actually recognise. We have a different view on what God is actually like, which I thought was very interesting. Also, some people actually, some Christian people actually invested in that campaign because they wanted to get the discussion going about what God was actually like and have those spiritual discussions. I think many people welcome that way of actually working.
Yeah.
I've got a few friends who would call themselves atheists, and we have some very interesting discussions.
Yes, it's great. It's great. I mean, and that bus quote was interesting, wasn't it? Now stop worrying and enjoy your life. And I think if believing in God means that your life has more worry in it, and you know that's not a good thing to have. Kind of we all want to be able to relax into our lives. That was really interesting. Yeah, I love a good debate. Awesome.
Do you know why they said there was probably no God as well?
Tell me.
Trade descriptions, because you can't prove either way. So they couldn't actually say there is no God, now stop worrying, because trade descriptions got involved with it. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. There we go. There we go. So do you think most people in this country, or even, I won't talk about the rest of the world, are probably some kind of agnostic? If we could prove something to them, or if they could work something out, maybe they would believe. Do you think?
I mean, on very little, on anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
Most people I know think there's something out there. Most people I know wouldn't necessarily say they believe in God, but they would say there's something out there, and they might. They might. I remember a friend saying to me once, "I don't want to put a label on it," and actually, I remember feeling that way as well. I think there's something out there, but so yeah, you could say that's agnostic.
Just got something from your dad actually as well about what an agnostic is, or was where the term actually came from, which I think was fascinating.
Thanks, Dad. Sorry, I edited that bit out. Apologies, Dad.
He's also put up his blog for those who want to get involved and talk more to him. I guess would be fascinating as well.
Merely Books. Merely was my grandma's nickname. Merely Books is my dad's blog.
Oh, Merely Books. Can I just say hello to my friend Scott, who's joined us as well, because otherwise I'd be in trouble.
Hi, Scott.
Yeah, there we go. Just so he's now famous. So Emma, we're almost up to time already. Can you believe it?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me, have you had a spiritual experience? Just in 30 seconds, can you give us an example of a spiritual experience you've had?
Yes. Quick one. I remember being in a really difficult time in my life, and I was really confused about what to do, and I felt really worried and anxious, and I was kind of trying to pray, and I kind of felt God saying something to me. And when I say that, what I mean is these words kind of came to my mind that sort of brought peace with them. And so I thought they were from God and not from me. And God said to me, I don't mind what you do. I'm more concerned about how you do it. And I'm not wise enough to come up with something like that. So that was a time in my life. And I've only had a few times in my life where I've really felt that God has said something to me clearly, and that was one of those times. Yeah.
So was that about your character more than about what you actually were doing? That kind of thing you're saying?
It was about leaving a job. It was a long time ago now, and I thought God was saying, well, you could leave your job or you could stay in your job. You know, I don't mind either way, but you need to think about kind of treating people well and leaving well and good relationships.
Brilliant.
How about you, Andy?
Well, I was trying to think about that, because maybe my first spiritual experience was I don't know about you, Emma, but I am the centre of the universe as far as I'm concerned, and everything else is here for my personal benefit and so on. And when I was a teenager, I suddenly had this realization that maybe I wasn't the centre of the universe. I know it's hard for you to believe that, but I had this thought that maybe I wasn't, and maybe other people thought they were centre of the universe as well. And so suddenly I began to think, is there more than just me in the world of importance? Sometimes I do think that, though, I'm the most important person, as my family will say. But I think
we do, don't we? Yeah.
I think on occasion. Yeah, I think on occasion. Yeah. Yeah. But also I think there was a time recently I was chatting to somebody, and they just said, just be quiet for a moment. and I just felt the words "trust me." Just felt the words "trust me," and I have to put it down to God, because this person was a Christian who I was kind of talking to, and I felt that kind of changed how I thought at that particular time, and probably since then. So I thought differently about life. Yeah. So Emma, it's almost, in fact, it's gone 10 to 2. 10 to 2. Yeah. That's a long thing. 10 to 9, basically. So that's our time up. So we're now going to move to the Zoom group. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. We are. Yeah. Just before, so you can see the meeting ID on the screen, and the Zoom link has gone up in the chat. You'd be very welcome to come into the Zoom meeting, and we'll chat for about another 20 minutes about the things that we've been talking about tonight. Whether or not you join the Zoom chat, we'd love to hear whether you've ever had a spiritual experience. So you might want to write that in the chat. You might want to send a private message to Leigh Road Baptist Church, or you can
the email's coming up as well at the moment. lifeandsoul@nrbc.org.uk. So folks can email us. Yeah, sorry.
So we'd love to hear if you've ever had a spiritual experience. That'd be a great starting point for next week. So we're going over to Zoom, and maybe see you there. And if not, maybe see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, folks. Nice to see you. Take care.